Madwa, Panyawa Jerusalem, stand face Jerusalem. Blessing of the new moon. Barakati Yahweh Bashem Yehoshai Asherah Nathan Nawab HaKadash Bashalawam Tuwara Amen. Blessed are Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the new moon in peace. Thank you, so be it. The Alim Ma'asharai Machat, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim Mayim Ya Oh Harayim Mayan Yabawa Azarya Yabawa Maya Shashab Shemayim Warataza La'ab Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala Yanawam Shashramarka Hanab La Yanawam Willa Ishan Shashramar Yashrale Yahweh Shemaria Yahweh Tzalia Ayu Ya Yim Ya Yawamam Hashemash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashmaria Mako Rai Yashmar Napashya Yahweh Yashmar Hawalakya Wabuaya My Thab Wa Aid I Walam Basham Yahweh Shai for what Amen. Psalms 121, a song of degrees. I will lift up mine eyes into the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen. Shema Yasharallah, Hero Israel. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Deuteronomy 6 and 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen. Thapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abinawa Sheba Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shanka Yahweh Malakwath Kab Thaba'a Ratazawanka Hayya Aisha Barataza Kaba Shemayim Natalanawa Lakham Yawam Zad Wasalakanawa Kabawat Nawa Kasalaknawa Kabawat Yanawa Wala Abiyarnawa O Nasayawan Abo Awashinawa Murai Kaya Laka Hamalakwat Wa ala wa thaparaf wa walam aman. Matthew 6 and 9. After this manner therefore pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Ha'ashara Matazawav, the Ten Commandments. La'ab, Yahayab, La'kab, Alahayim, Akharim, Alapanyat, La'ab, Thaishab, La'kab, Paso, Wala'ab, Thaibadam, La'ab, Thalakwakaf, Shamwa, Yahweh, Alayaka, Lashua, Zakar, Af, Ayawam, Hashabaf, Lakudashwa, Kabad, Abiyaka, Wa Amaka, La'at, Thratazak, La'at, Thana'ap, La'at, Thaganab, La'at, Thainad, Shakur, La'at, Thakhamad, Kal, Asherad, Lara'ika, Aman. Exodus 20 and 3. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord I hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen. Yeshua, be seated. Barakateh Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asheran, Thanawa, Parya, Gapan, Tuara Aman. La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Af, Yasher Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Panyua, Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakateh Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyah, Wanawa'ai, Aliyawan, Malak, Shal Shemayim, Warataza, Wakal, Dabarium, Kayayim, Wagam, Hamashayak, Mayahawe, Arawanawe, Habnawe, Hapolet, Yawaitaza, Yahawashai, Zakarnawe, Yahawe, Baratazawan, Ainka, Yasha'ala, Zarnawe, Banai, Wasap, Yasha'ala, Nanawa, Yam Yan, Aitha, Kayawamyam, Makwadam, Babakushai, Shalak, Mike Allah, wa Tazwadak, Alahayam, La Maganawa, Rabharnawa, wa Shamar, I'll know by Shalak Haroka Shao Yahushai Lanawa Lamadnawa Rabium Kakama Sabawana Wada I Shao the Barka Basham Yahushai for Wada from Yad Why Willam Man. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Latan Lanawa, Hatawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Latan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awath. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Latam Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, La Korat, Ha'aim, Yeshabwa. Be seated. Okay, so Shalom Yasharallah. So Shalom everybody here in Philly. Shalom everybody watching on live stream, and shalom everybody listening on teleconference. Welcome to Yasharallah Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the so-called Black, Latin, and Native Americans found throughout North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean are the 12 tribes of Israel, once lost, now found, and that we fall into a lower state, politically, economically, and religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in the Bible given to us by Moses. That we come out of this lower state that we fall into by turning back to these commandments we broke, by following Jesus Christ, who did no sin, neither was God found in his mouth. The scriptures tell us that sin is the transgression of the law, meaning Christ kept the law perfectly. So one way we do that is by keeping the new moon holy, which we're doing tonight. And as other congregations out there, the Branches of Christ, are doing tonight, celebrating the new moon. All right. And what we'll do is we'll just go over a couple new moon scriptures, but I want to pick up where we left off last time. I was able to do the new moon with you guys for verses dealing with can we judge. I'll touch on some we read before and then read some others before we finish up this evening. I won't try to go too long in case anyone has to go to bed early tonight. All right, my name is Nabi Azar Babal. I'll be doing the service this evening. Just write down for your records that according to Gregorian calendar, it would be June 9th, 2021. But according to our calendar, it would be the third month and the first day. Third month and the first day. All right, so first, let's go to Numbers chapter 10, verse 10. So Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10, just call it, just say come once you have it. Okay, so in Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10. Oops, forgot to change this. Service. There we go. Numbers chapter 10 and verse 10, it reads, also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginning of your months, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for memorial before your God. I am the Lord your God. Right? So this was what? When the Most High was talking through Moses to talk to the children of Israel. When? Right after we left out of Egypt, we were in the wilderness. He's setting us up as a nation on our own. And he's telling them what? That during the days of their gladness and during their solemn days, it says, and in the beginnings of their months. So that's when we're in right now, the beginning of the month. What should they do? It says, you shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings. So that's what we do. That's what we did today and for other holy days as well. This being the example of a trumpet. Right. Of course, we have trumpets made of metal, which you read about even here, how they made trumpets of silver to be used. But this is also a trumpet as well. In the ancient Hebrew, it's called a shawapar, or like you'll hear the so-called Jews will say in the Yiddish, a shofar. So we would sound with our trumpets or blow with our trumpets over our burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of our peace offerings. Those are offerings that we would do, which those instructions are found in Leviticus chapters 1 through 7. It goes into the instructions for how to do all of our basic offerings, including burnt offerings and peace offerings. Only difference is we don't do that now because we go through Christ. The scriptures tell us that Christ, he was the ultimate sacrifice, so that we go through him and through his mercy to where we don't do the laws of sacrifice, because that's part of the Old Testament. The Old Testament deals with what? Not the books of the Bible, but what's literally the Old Testament. It deals with what? The offering of the blood of animals for sin. The New Testament, with its testator, is Christ when you read in Hebrews. So that's what we go through now. So through his blood being shed on the cross, just over 2,000 years ago, give or take, That's how now we come to the Lord, right? We come to the Lord through that grace of his son, Jesus Christ, or in the ancient Hebrew, Yahweh Shah Mashiach, offering himself for the sins of the nation to give us another shot. And thank goodness he did. So, along with this, we always had to get the example of us actually keeping it, because you'll find that throughout the Kings and the Chronicles. Let's go there. Let's go to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 20. Because we can talk to folks and say, yes, this is what we're supposed to do, but they want to see you demonstrate. So we demonstrated this. It wasn't just lip service. It was actually something that we did. And we're still supposed to continue to do, even now. Some people are under the false misconception that since Christ came, died on the cross, and rose again, we're not to keep these holy days anymore. And that's not true. It's far from the truth. So 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. Just say "Con" once you have it. So 1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 5. And it reads, "And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go that I might hide myself in the field unto the third day at even." So who's the subject of this verse? David and Jonathan, right? Who's David? He's King Saul's armor bearer at this time. Who's Jonathan? Saul's son next in line. David and Jonathan are good friends when you read in the scriptures. So they're talking with each other, and David is telling Jonathan what? Tomorrow is the new moon. So from that day going into the next day, that next day coming after that point is going to be the new moon. So it's like us having a conversation on Tuesday, and I'm telling you tomorrow is the new moon, right? It says, "And I should not fail to sit with the king at meat," because he was Saul's armor bearer. He was part of his entourage, right, at that point. Right? David was elevated to being his armor bearer after his victory with Goliath, right? Because he got a name for himself and fame. So he's supposed to be there. But he says, "But let me go that I might hide myself in the field until the third day at even." So he's asking Jonathan that he's going to go into the field and hide there until the third day at even. Why is he not showing up to dinner? Because there's an evil spirit that came on Saul, right? Through his disobedience previously. And now he has an evil eye towards David, to where he seeks to take his life. David knows this, so he's avoiding Saul, right, so he can regroup and figure out what to do next, because he knows what's going to happen if he goes to see Saul face to face. So now let's get to the point where they actually keep the new moon. I just want to provide that background in case you guys didn't know. You guys are just hearing this for the first time. So 1 Samuel 20, it was verse 5. Now we're going to jump to 24. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 24. It reads, "So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat." Just like David told Jonathan, he hid himself in the field. So it says, when the new moon came in, who? The king. What did he do? He sat down to eat meat, just as they would normally do during this feast. Verse 25, "And the king sat him down, sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty." So the king, which is King Saul, sat upon his seat. It says, as at other times. So that's usually where he sat. It says even where he sat, even upon a seat by the wall. So he had a seat that was close to the wall. Kind of like if you go to you might go to where your family was, grew up. If you are older and moved out, dad or granddad or right or whoever, they would have the seat at the head of the table, right? They would have a seat that could be faced towards a certain direction, right? Where oh, that's so-and-so's chair. Don't sit in it, So We see that here. It says, and Jonathan arose, so his son Jonathan was there. It says, and Abner sat by Saul's side, Abner being Saul's captain of the host. So he was there too, his top general. But it says David's place was empty. So we, at a reading, we know why he's not there. But Saul doesn't. Let's see what Saul thinks. Verse 26. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought, something had befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. So Saul at that new moon didn't say anything because he knew he would normally and typically come to the new moon and sit down. But he said, oh, something must befall him. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean. So he's thinking that he's probably unclean for one reason or another, right? Maybe came across a dead body, right? Or his seed of copulation came out of him, right? Something, right? As the reason as to why he doesn't come. So he's not making a big thing out of it. Because the law goes into different ways we can become unclean. And when we do become unclean, it's not a sin unless you are doing something wicked to lead to it. There's lawful ways to become unclean, like the examples that I listed. You become or go against the commandment when you don't do what the Most High said, which is don't come near anything holy, or don't come together for any holy convocation. Stay apart until your days of uncleanness are fulfilled. So Saul, knowing this, he's thinking that David is just following this. He's assuming that, but he's working off of limited information he doesn't know. Then it says in verse 27, and it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month. I like this to let you know that the first day of the month is the new moon, right? Because if the day after the new moon is the second day of the month, it means that the day before was the first day of the month, which was the new moon. So it says, and it came to pass on the morrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? So 2 days now, David's place is empty still. Remember, Jonathan knows. He told Jonathan he's going to be out there for 3 days, right? So the second day's gone by, and Saul is still confused, right? He said, how come the son of Jesse, which is David's father, he said, how come yesterday and today he hasn't shown up? What's going on? But as you read on, you'll see what happens. But just want to read those verses as key verses to show an example of our ancestors keeping this holy day of the new moon, right? It was even told us in the Psalms to keep this, right? And to keep it holy. So go to Psalms 81. Psalms 81, verses 3 and 4. Got it? So Psalms 81 and 3, it reads, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. So that's what we did. We sound off with the shawapar, right? Or ram's horn, a type of trumpet. When did we do it? In the time appointed on our solemn feast day, which is what we're keeping right now, the new moon. So we see it's even part of a psalm here, right? Which we know psalms are instructional as well, right? While psalms edify us, psalms, we sing psalms to uplift us rather. Psalms can edify us as well, right? We know when it comes to the psalms of God, they're prophetic, right? We're not just, singing or, doing poetry or rapping, just any old thing, like you'll see in the world, right? And even in the world, you'll see we'll sing and rap and perform psalms, but not righteous psalms, but psalms of the world, right? Promoting carnal things, wickedness. Sometimes they're quote unquote conscious, right? Talking about current events, right? But very rarely do we tie them back to the scriptures. In some cases we do, right? And those things get some buzz sometimes, right? When you have certain music artists that'll make references either directly or indirectly to the scriptures, right? But these psalms or songs are supposed to be songs that we sung and performed, but for righteousness, right? To promote righteousness, not wickedness, not the ways of the heathen. It says in verse 4, Psalms 81, verse 4, for this, meaning keeping the new moon, was a statute or a law for Israel. That's who we are, right? in the Hebrew, Yashar'Allah, right? Which just means he or she is a prince or princess of power, right? So we're supposed to be chiefs of power. We're supposed to take power and wield it and grow it, right? That's a name has a lot of responsibility attached to it. But how can we do that if we don't understand the Most High's law? Which without it, we can't keep any type of power for any substantial period of time. We can't get power over the thing that matters most, which is our soul. We can't do that without the Most High's commandments. We try in the world, right, in different captivities like the one now. But you'll see how we always fall short because the other nations will betray us and rob us, and we have no defense. But the Most High said it would be that way. So it says once again, for this was a statute for Israel and a law of the God or power of Jacob, right? So Jacob, Israel, the same person, right? Israel being the name he gave after he wrestled with the angel and was successful and prevailed. So you may say, oh, this is something that we don't have to do anymore. Or this is something that, is just yesterday's news. But not true. Let's go to Isaiah 66. Let's get a prophecy that talks about the new moon being kept in the future that we haven't fulfilled yet. Isaiah chapter 66. Let's go to verse 23 and just say, "Come, once you have it."
"56 and 23.
66 and 23. It's actually second to the last verse of Isaiah. So Isaiah 66 is the final chapter. The final chapter. So you have that?
66 and 23.
Mm-hmm. So Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 23, it says, "And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord." So this is a future prophecy. This is something that hasn't happened yet, even right now in 2021. It says, "It shall come to pass that from one new moon to another," right, like we're keeping right now, "and from one Sabbath to another," which we'll keep at the end of this week, right? Most High's will, right? We're alive at that point. "Shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord." So this is something that hasn't happened yet because it's like musical chairs, right? Every nation is like marching around, and then every time they turn the music off, they take a chair away, right? And we're going to be the winner in the end. Every nation is given a chance to, have their time in the sun to rule. Based on how they rule, if it was according to righteousness or wickedness, in most cases, wickedness, right? They're taken out of there. So this is Esau's time. He fell for a time during the Dark Ages as the prophecy fulfilled. Now he's back. He's been back back in power in this current government just over 400 years, right? We know we're getting pretty close to the end. As you read in the Tuesday class, no man know the day nor the hour, right? But we know we're in that window, right? We know we were in the Egypt before, right? Right now, we're in America, what is considered like a spiritual Egypt, right? We were in the old Egypt from before, right? It says that we were there for 430 years before the Most High delivered us out. So this time, right according to the prophecy, if the Most High were to decide, we're not saying he is or not, we don't know. But if he were to decide after 430 years in this Egypt to take us out, that would be in the year 2050, right? So Christ will come back before then, Christ will come back after then, right? We don't know. But it's just something to keep in mind if we parallel what we dealt with in Egypt, being in that captivity, and parallel to the captivity that we're in now, right? Which has a lot more wickedness going on because not only is Esau the daughter, the spiritual Sodom in Egypt, So he's spiritual Egypt, but his government is also spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah. So he puts those practices forward. That's why you see him pushing right now in the month of June. It's a gay pride month, right? So that's them taking on that Hamite wicked spirit of Sodom and Gomorrah, because those Hamites were into that behavior too. So we see Esau adopting that. And then also, Esau's called the daughter of Babylon. So America is also referred to as Babylon the Great. So they follow those Hamites too, right? So it's almost like, man, what Hamites are Esau not going to emulate, right? And go above and beyond as far as wickedness. So that's why in America you got, celebrations like Easter and Christmas, right? Which has nothing to do with our Lord and Savior, but everything to do with Babylon, right? Ancient Babylon. Them celebrating false gods and idols, especially during the times of key days of the cycles of the sun, right? So that's what we're dealing with. That's how this government really works. And I mentioned it before. So we're talking about keeping, the new moon and keeping the times and making a note of things in the heavens, right? It's not surprising that when you look at America, spiritual Sodom and Egypt, Babylon the Great, right? That they would do this, right? Or that they would be how they are, they would be called this. Because when you look at the White House, most of us look at the White House, but very few of us consider the vice president's house, right? Because we always talk about where the president is, right? And his or her family, right? Depending on who's the president. We never talk about the vice president's house, right? Where he or she stays, and how it's connected to one observatory way, right? Folks that are in DC are familiar, obviously, and folks who just know, who have read, know. So how ironic that the vice president's house, right? The second most powerful figure in the United States government, right? At least as far as how they present it to us, is adjoined to the United States Naval Observatory. What do they do at the Naval Observatory? They're looking up in the heavens, looking at the sun, moon, and stars, right? Trying to study the heavens, trying to predict when certain things are going to happen. So then they lay out their plans based on those pursuits. But now, we could just do it in a pure fashion and just go back to the scriptures and study the prophecy and do what's necessary. But no, they do it according to the way of the wicked, the Hamite way, right? They observe times and deal with enchantments, deal with astrology, and deal with prognostications and astrology, things like that, and things that are on the left-hand side. So these things are going to be a thing. They're going to what? Bury them deep in their grave. Something they're not going to be able to come back from, because this is their strength, right? Their strength is dealing with witchcraft and the occult, right? Dealing with mystery religions instead of dealing with righteous mystery, which is following Christ as it's written. So these things are all prophesied. The Most High called this nation out, these people out for what they are and what they do. So let's make sure we contrast with that as far as what we represent, what we do, because in the future, this is going to be the day that's set up. Not these wicked so-called holidays, or some brothers may say holidays, that they have set up, that they make people think, oh, it's about religion, it's about serving, the God of this Bible. Really is getting them what? Worshiping the sun, moon, and stars, right? Getting them to observe times and getting them to partake in wickedness, as opposed to the righteous worship of the Most High in Christ. And one of the main reasons why they've been able to do that is because when we had the power, we abused the power that was given us, right? We didn't take these days seriously. Let me get one more before I get some verses on judging. But go to Amos real quick. Go to Amos chapter 8. And I'll start from verse 4. So when Amos wrote this prophecy down, right, he was actually talking about us being in authority, us, the Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom, right? I believe the Northern Kingdom was still there. This was before they left around 722 BC after the Assyrian captivity. All in all, he's coming at the leadership at that time that was in Israel, saying, woe or destruction to them that do these what? Wrong things. What are some examples? Amos chapter 8 and verse 4, it reads, just say comment you have it. Amos 8 and 4, you have it written down? Amos chapter 8 and verse 4. So Amos chapter 8 and verse 4, it says, hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy. Right? It's after the major prophets. It's after Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel. Then it goes Hosea, Joel, and then Amos. So look for those big books first. And then you start turning your pages slowly because you might miss it. So Amos chapter 8 and verse 4 again, it says, hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail. So our leaders were what? Swallowing up the needy, the poor of our people. Scriptures tell you this, that what? They were never failed to be poor in the land. The law goes into Israel did have how they were supposed to deal with what they had when it came to those who had not, right? And they were supposed to be willing to give their excess to help out their brother or sister in need. So it says, hear this, that swallow the needy, even make the poor of the land to fail, not give them the things they need to actually come out of their poverty, right? Which is oppression. Verse 5, it says, saying, when will the new moon be gone that we may sell corn? So these folks that are in a position of wealth, right, they have some kind of, business that's selling their produce. They're saying to each other, when will the new moon be gone? We may sell corn. So it's like the new moons become a hindrance unto them, right? It's like getting in their way, right? Instead of keeping the new moon holy and not conducting one's business, right? Keeping like you would a Sabbath, right? Which we're supposed to do to the best of our ability, right? That may be difficult now, given that we're in captivity and our work schedules may not allow it, or if we work for ourselves or we're self-employed or have a business. Sometimes we may not be able to close on the holy day, right? Even though we try our best to do it in righteousness where we can be closed on the holy days. But you may have necessity for you and your family. But this is going into them willingly wanting to go against the new moon so that they can sell corn. It's not like something that you're doing out of grace like we would deal with now. But them having power, they're abusing that power by not letting the Most High get his just due. And they're what? Business as usual on the day when you're supposed to be on the Most High's business. That's why they said this. But then it says in verse 5, reading on, and the Sabbath that we may set forth wheat. So on the Sabbath, they're trying to do their own business as well, right? Instead of keeping that holy. Then it says, so on top of them buying and selling on the Most High's holy days, like the new moon and the Sabbath, what else are they doing? It says they're making the ephah small and the shekel great. In other words, an ephah is dealing with like a measure, a dry measure, right? You can measure different crops in a volume of an ephah, right? As far as an ephah of this or ephah of that. It says they make the ephah small, but then it says the shekel great, which the shekel was our universal currency. It's going to be the new standard currency in the kingdom going forward. It's going to be the shekel of the sanctuary, right? That's what all nations that we're going to take to have in captivity are going to pay in that form to us, right? We're going to count it or equate it according to shekels, anything that they would monetize when it comes to them bringing their tribute unto us. So right now in the world, there's a couple different currencies, right? The U.S. dollar, they try to consider that as the world currency, right? The staple currency upon which others are based. But in the kingdom, the shekel is going to be the one that's going to be based on. So everything's going to revolve around the temple, right? All the transactions go in and out of the temple. That's going to be the central point in the kingdom, right? As opposed to what Esau has now. But anyway, what were we doing back then? We were making the ephah small and the shekel great. In other words, we were getting what? The amount, making that less, but then making the shekel great, meaning making it cost more, right? So it's like a pound of cornmeal, right? Say a pound of cornmeal costs $1, right? They would take a half of cornmeal, right? A half a pound, and then charge you $2. How's that work, right? It's supposed to be a pound for $1 in the example, right? So they would take less of it and charge you more. Say again? Right, gouging the price, exactly. So that's what that means. So it says, makes the ephah small and the shekel great. Then it says, and falsifying the balances by deceit. So that's a law too that the Most High said don't break, which is don't deal with the false balance and the false weight, right? A pound of cornmeal should be worth a pound of cornmeal. A pound of gold is a pound of gold, right? If you look at the way our economy is supposed to be, it's supposed to be just like this. It's supposed to be just a line going like that. Productivity growth, right? Not this up and down, right? Short-term, long-term debt cycle nonsense. Esau has going on, which he uses as a tool to bankrupt people, right? You allow inflation to get out of hand, and then let the dollar become, worthless, and then let it tank, and let the price of price per share of different assets, companies and assets that they have to go down, and they'll go and buy those companies up on cents to the dollar. This is a game that they've played throughout recent history. But really, in righteousness, there's not supposed to be fluctuating prices of goods, right? Yeah, we're going to have usury, right? And the nation's going to pay usury, which is just in the Bible we will call interest today. Same thing, same concept. But as far as what the value is for a certain weight or a certain amount of something, it's supposed to always cost that amount. And the only way that you're going to really get or gain more is what? Increase according to righteousness, right? That's going to be the meritocracy in the kingdom, right? Because Esau tried to sell this idea about, doing things based on merit. And if you have merit, you should, be able to reap the most, and, a capitalist setup. It's going to be doing it according to righteousness, meaning whatever you have increased in, you deal with what you have according to righteousness, like we were talking about Tuesday, right? Making sure a tenth goes into the Most High, right? To the Levites. A tenth goes to the Most High in the form of to the kings, right? That you do your necessary offerings, right? When holy days come around, right? You deal with the poor in the land accordingly, right? With your excess, right? These are the things that people are going to be tested on. Israel, namely, and the other nations are going to look at our example and realize, oh, this is how you really get wealth. Because for those that do that, right, that are liberal with what they've been blessed with, the Most High will increase what they have, right? And they have to let the land rest every year, right? Every 7 years, rather. And every 50th year during Jubilee, too. You look at the heathen now, Esau especially, they're growing stuff all the time. So just like they want to do business on the Most High's holy days, like the Sabbath day and the new moon and other holy days, right? High holy days. It should be resting. You got the heathen also what? Not letting the land itself get its year of rest. Just like we have every seventh day of the week, we're supposed to rest, right? Just like in the summer, we count 7 weeks when the wheat harvest begins, right? To keep one of our major holy days, the Feast of First Fruits. We even have every not just 7 days, say every 7 weeks in the summer. Every 7 years, we're supposed to have what they call a year of release. We're supposed to relinquish debts that are owed between each other, right? As well as let the land itself rest, right? But with the heathen, they're so greedy. They're going to have you work on the Sabbath. They're going to have you work throughout the holy days, right? New moons and Sabbaths. They're going to have you, they're going to still work the land on that 7th year, not let the land itself rest. And then wonder why, the land isn't yielding its increase. The land needs rest too. You can't overwork it. And then, through their own rationale, they'll get into science and start breaking down molecules and atoms, right, of different things, getting into chemistry and all that. Knowledge being increased, as the prophecy said. Now they're going to try to manipulate fruits and vegetables and cattle, right, as far as on the genetic level, to get them to grow stronger or to grow a certain way where they don't grow seeds or they grow sterile, so they can make a profit, right? And then get the most out of the Most High's creation, instead of doing it naturally according to the Most High's law, which would what? Allow it to grow even stronger and even more, and even in more variety, right? They don't want to use the Most High's model, right? They rather go against the Most High's model and then make it bigger on their own terms. And that's why we see a bunch of the blowback that they're dealing with, right? When they do genetic modification. Because at first it gets the result that they seek, right? It may be plumper or the color might be richer. But then if they find that what, after some time, there's other side effects, right? When they genetically modify, fruits and vegetables, and cattle, and things like that. So, profess themselves to be wise, they became fools, right? He's got all the knowledge in the world, but lacks the wisdom that matters most, right? Because remember, all information isn't knowledge, all knowledge isn't wisdom, right? So the key is, if you've been blessed with knowledge, what do you do with it? And do you acknowledge the Most High's wisdom first and foremost, right, as a basis for any knowledge you found? And if you don't, it's going to be something that will bite you in the end. So yeah, now they're doing this, but this wouldn't have happened unless we, as a people, did this to each other. That's where Amos is coming in here when he says this. That's why he says in verse 6, that we may buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes, yeah, and sell the refuse or the excess of the wheat, right? So not trying to help their brother, but trying to profit for themselves, right? Their brother that's down and out. That's why it says buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes, right? Because when you are indebted, you can become or held as a servant until you pay off that debt. So that's what it means when they say buy the poor for silver and needy for a pair of shoes. Then it says and sell the refuse of the wheat. So that's not what we're supposed to do. That's not how we're supposed to treat these holy days, right? Like I said, if anything, we apply grace if we have to, right? Work on this, the Sabbath and holy days, right? But through practice, the idea is to get in a mode where you're basing your schedule around the Most High schedule, not the other way around, right? Not set up your schedules for what you want to do in this world and then, inviting the Most High into your life. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I'll spend some time with the Most High. He said to take this day off. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it now because I don't have anything on my schedule. If anything, you should be ordering your schedule around his schedule, right? And that's harder for some of us to do than others. But the Most High will look favorably upon those of us that make that effort to do this and do it fully, right, as best we can. All right, so that's Amos 8:4-6. But let's go to this real quick because I know I was talking about this before about judging. Let's do a quick recap. Go to St. John chapter 5. St. John chapter 5. In verse 30. So St. John chapter 5, verse 30. If you could read that, Baba Kurshan. Nice and loud so everybody can hear you.
St. John chapter 5, verse 30. I call my own self to do nothing as I hear, I pledge, what is that word? I judge, and my judgment is just because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me.
Right. So what's Christ saying here?
He's not seeking his own will. He's seeking the will of the Most High. He's not coming. In other words, he's not coming on his own accord. He doesn't have his own agenda.
Right. Okay. And then the first part where he says, I can of my own self do nothing as I hear I judge. What's that?
What did it say?
What's the first precept where it says, I can of mine own self do nothing as I hear I judge. As I hear I judge. What's that saying?
says, what is that, 20?
Same verse. It's just the top part of the verse. Chapter 5, verse 30.
I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge. In my judgment.
Right. So I'm asking that. So I'm asking that first precept. What's that?
Okay. Well, I think I understand. He said he doesn't do anything on his own. He gets all his instruction, all his inspiration from the Most High. Nothing comes from him.
That's right. You just reiterated what you said the second part, but this part is more so is going into him observing, right? Him listening, right?
Nothing.
So he's going to go off of what he sees here, what he perceives through his senses, right? So it's not going to be like
judgment from the Most High. The Most High gives him the ability to do it. He don't do it himself. It's not his will.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his will to do it. It's the will of the Most High. As he hear, as the Most High communicates with him, then he makes his judgment.
Well, that's true. What he's really just getting at here, he's what he's saying is he's going to be looking at everything case by case. He's going to be observing, just using his senses, right, to perceive the situation, right? He's not going to be like you said, a private interpretation, but he's going to be observing, taking things into account. Like we always talk about asking questions, right? Who was involved? What took place? Where did it happen? When did it happen, right? He's going to investigate. That's what he means when he says, I could of my own self do nothing, as I hear, I judge. So he's going to be what? An even just judge. He's not going to have favoritism. He's not going to accept bribes, right? It's going to be based on what he perceives. Right. That's why he says this. Go to St. John 7 in verse 24.
John 7, verse 24. Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment.
Right. What's that saying?
In other words, don't look on what you see so much. But don't just judge by what you see, because what you see may deceive you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to go a little deeper into the situation in order to be righteous and have a righteous judgment. Just don't go by what you see.
Exactly.
What you see could deceive you.
That's absolutely it. And sometimes what you see may be it, but what he's saying is just make sure. Just don't go off that by itself. You know, it's just like when people talk about reading body language, right? Like scriptures go into body language, how it can tell you a lot about somebody, how someone carries himself. And Solomon talks about it in Proverbs. He talks about, key areas to look at on somebody. 3 areas to look at are like the eyes, people's hands, and people's feet. Pretty much like their extremities, right? Those are the key areas to look at when it comes to someone when you're reading their body language. There's other parts too, but those are the key areas, right? So if you're talking to someone, they're doing stuff with their hands, doing stuff with their feet, or they're looking different ways, right? Making eye contact, not making eye contact. Why are they making or not making eye contact? All these things give us an idea of, okay, the kind of spirit somebody has and what they're trying to do, what they're about. So you want to take all those things into account. Don't just go off of one thing by itself, because you may see their hands might be a little nervous, right? But why a person may be nervous, right? And giving off nervous body language may not be what you think, right? They may be nervous for another reason altogether. So sometimes you might read the right body language, right? Like, okay, I see this person's a little uneasy where they're putting their hands in their hair, or they're scratching, or they're tapping their foot or something, right? Like we're talking about, you still want to ask other questions. You want to ask the other W's, who, what, where, when, right? Why? Try to find out as much as you can to really get the why behind what they're doing. Because you deal with limited information, your why might be incorrect. As you find out more, and it's like, okay, now I have more context behind, okay, why they were fiddling like that.
Get more edification
Mm-hmm.
into the thing that you're trying to judge. See if you can find some more information about what you're trying to judge.
Exactly. Stay in this chapter, jump to verse 50 and 51. This is an interesting thing that, remember Nicodemus, right? He was a Pharisee at the Christ had edified, right? He taught Nicodemus as far as what it meant to be born again, remember? Because Nicodemus, he didn't understand it. And he said that. He thought he was saying, how could someone go back into their mother's womb? It didn't make sense to him. He explained to him that you got to be born of water and of the Spirit, right? Like, you can't just be, you can't just be born physically, right? Like when your mother's water breaks, so to speak. But you have to be born that way, yeah, to be physically here, but then to be born of the Spirit, that's another rebirth, right? We all haven't been born that way. All of us here have been born of the water. We haven't been born of the Spirit necessarily, right? That means that we're dealing with the truth as opposed to just some doctrine that's out here. Something posing to be of God. So read verses 50 and 51, Baba Kusha.
John 7, verse 50. Nicodemus said unto them, that came to Jesus by night, being one of them, do our law judge any man before it hear him and know what he doeth?
Mm-hmm. So what's that saying?
In other words, you can't, the law judges them based on what the person has done. Is this a carnal way of saying, is this a biblical way of saying guilty, innocent till proven guilty?
Mm. Kind of. That's a way of putting it here. Yeah. Exactly. Like, and it's funny, even Esau's Constitution talks about this, right? Not to say they would grant that to us and throughout history and current times. We talk about a right to a speedy trial, right? To be judged of one's peers. So you have a right to have a case, right, for whatever you're being judged about. This goes back to what we read earlier in John 5, where Christ says, as I hear, I judge, right? So he's going to hear out the case first before he just passes judgment. And him being an example, we got to be the same way, right? We're presented with different things out here in the world and presented with different matters to try to discern between good and evil, between well and better, right? Because we might have small matters that are easy. Oh, okay, I know what to do here. And sometimes you might have greater matters, right? That might be a little more involved, right? Require a little more thought. But all in all, we got the questions that we ask in any language, right? Like in English, it's the 5 W's, right? And the H's, right? How many, how much. We ask those things to find out more information, right? So that we can figure out the best choice to go with. And the parables of Christ support this, right? And we study his parables and the insight they give us. But let's jump to Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3. In verse 3. And read that, Baba Kusha.
Romans chapter 3, verse 3. what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of God without effect?
Right. So give the sense. What's that saying?
In other words, just because people don't believe, that doesn't make the word of God unaffected. It's still going to go out and do what it's going to accomplish what it will, whether you believe it or not. It's going to accomplish what it will. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe if it's snowing outside and you say it's sunshine and you say I tell you it's snowing outside and you say it's not. That's not going to change it.
Right.
Because once you step out there, you'll find out.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Con. So read verse 4 and give us the sense on that one too. Cause us to understand that reading.
God forbid, for ye let God be true, but every man a liar, as it is written, thou mightest be justified in thy sayings, and mightest overcome when thou art judged.
Right. So what's that saying?
Justified in thy saying. Justified in thy saying. In other words, the word of God is, I guess, would be used in that case if you had the scripture to back up what you're saying. So we have to be justified in scripture, the word of God, but you would have to know the precepts to formulate your argument.
That's exactly what it's saying. Because they're going to be coming at you about what you're doing, what you're saying, and saying, that's not right. That's wrong. That's wicked. That's confusion. That's, whatever. And giving you whatever label the world might throw at you, right? Oh, you're a black identity extremist. You're a hate group. Oh, you're homophobic. Oh, you're thisophobic, thatophobic, right? All types of stuff, right? All types of things they can do to name call, right? And to insult. But that's why Paul is saying this and writing this to the Romans. He's saying, like you just said, let the scriptures be what back you up, right? Let that be the thing that has your back. And you say, look, I'm just going by what the Most High said, according to scripture, according to as it's written, right? Let's read it together, brother, sister, stranger. Read the verse. Get the edification. What do you see? Do you see something different? Yeah, no, right? And then take it from there and then just try to find out, okay, is this person just blind or are they rebellious? Right? And then if they're rebellious, it's usually dealing with one of the temptations, right? Parable of the sower and the seed. Or the seed that fell by the wayside, or the seed that fell on the stony ground, or the seed that fell on amongst the thorns. So they're resisting what the word is saying because of doctrines, because of afflictions, right? They may be trying to avoid or that they went through, or lusts, desires of the flesh that they want to partake in, that they may think or feel that the scriptures won't allow. That's everybody, regardless of, their background. Everyone's tempted the same way. It's a beautiful thing that we have parables like that, and even Christ himself being tempted and how he overcame, to where we can level like that playing field, and even with dealing with people we haven't met, where we just are meeting maybe for the first time. We'll find out very quickly, wow, we're all different spirits, as far as Israel, as far as the heathen. We're really all tempted the same way, right? I can really pin it down now, thanks to that parable. I can really tap into why this person is saying this, why this person is doing this, just by asking those questions and finding out. Yeah, this links with Psalms 51. Psalms 51 in verse 4. You can just write it. That's what Paul is quoting here. So Psalms 51 and 4 connects with Romans chapter 3 and verse 4. Let's also go to Romans chapter 14. Romans chapter 14 and verse 3. Just say come once you have it. So Romans chapter 14 and verse 3 reads, let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not, and let not him which eateth not judge him that eateth, for God hath received him. What this chapter is going into is when it comes to judging as far as what your brother or sister consumes or doesn't consume, eats or doesn't eat, right? As long as it's lawful, it's okay. But sometimes folks may have a certain preference, right? Like some folks may like to get their protein, maybe not from, chicken or eggs, they might get their protein from legumes or something else. And that's how they usually eat. If that's the case, if everything they're eating is lawful anyway, you don't have to compel them to eat the same meat that you do, right? Or the same food that you do, right? There's all types of options out there, right? For people to get the nutrition that they need, right? It's proper amount, right? To get their proteins, their carbohydrates, their fats, like I said, those three core elements when it comes to your diet. You can get all types of lawful foods to provide those for you. So that's what this is going into. It's saying that's how you decide, right? When it comes to for yourself and then for someone else, if they're in the wrong or not. It becomes an easy matter when you or someone else is eating something that's clearly against the law, the dietary law that we find in Leviticus 11, Deuteronomy 14. Otherwise, as long as it's lawful, don't judge your brother or sister because, for example, you drink strong drink. You don't drink to get drunk, but you drink strong drink, right? Be it wine, right, or what have you. But then your brother or sister doesn't want to drink strong drink, right? Just because you can doesn't mean that they have to. It just means that they have the option, then they don't have to. Heck, we even have the vow of the Nazarite, right? Where if you take that vow, it says you're not supposed to, drink of anything that comes from a dry grape, right? Or anything like fermented, right? So you definitely can't go to a person under the Nazarite vow and tell them shame on you. So the key is to only deal with those things that are lawful, but if a person has a certain preference, then let them be. Stay in this chapter, jump down to verse 10. And it reads, but why dost thou judge thy brother? Or why dost thou set at naught thy brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Verse 11, for it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. 12, so then every one of us should give account of himself to God. 13, let us not therefore judge one another anymore, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way, right? So that should be the way we go about it, right? Don't compel your brother to do something that he or she may not be, comfortable with doing, even if it's lawful, right? Say in the case of, what you decide to eat. It could even be, certain things, certain affairs you may decide to partake in, right? Some things may be, lawful, but it may not be expedient for the other person. It may be expedient for you, but it may not be expedient for your brother or sister. As long as what they're saying and doing is lawful, then it's free reign. Who are you to come in and judge them? That's why he's putting it out there to say, look, we all got to be judged before the judgment seat of Christ. So you don't want to be one that's found, wanting when it comes to the Most High's mercy, because you were coming hardcore with your brother or sister for something that, really had no need for you to even go in that far. That's why Romans 4 and 15 says this. Get that and I'll read that real quick. Romans chapter 4 and verse 15.
Romans 4 and verse 15. Because the law worketh wrath, for where no law, there is no transgression.
Right. So what's that saying?
Where there's no law, there's no transgression. If you do something and there's no law against it, then it's not transgression.
That's it. Simple verse, but can be easily overlooked. And, it's easy for a brother, especially a brother that has a certain level of authority in the scriptures, right? A certain level of might when it comes to the scriptures to, impose things on, people that he teaches or people that he has under him, right? That really there's no grounds in the scriptures to even validate it. So you just want to be careful of this, right? Because, as we've been shown a lot of knowledge from the Most High and given a lot of understanding about things. We've got to be mindful that knowledge does puff up. And if we're not careful, it might make us proud to where it'll topple our fruit of the Spirit. Instead of being humble, we'll get proud. And then instead of being kind to our brother, we might be cruel. Because the fruit of the Spirit talk about brotherly kindness, not cruelty. But cruelty works against that kindness. Right? Hence the law working wrath, like it says in the first part. And let's jump to 1 Corinthians. I love going to this one here because you hear it in the world all the time, right? Your truth, my truth, his truth, her truth, right? Their truth. Truth is subjective, right? Let me share my truth with you, right? The truth is personal. It's not like this like it's supposed to be. The truth is the truth. Like we read earlier in Romans 3. Regardless of what I think, it's going to be the truth, no matter what. But 1 Corinthians 2 and 15, right? I like to set this one up when I'm talking to folk where they'll come with that same spirit, that same understanding from the world, that the truth is subjective. And they say, or they say, I'm not religious. And they'll say, I'm not religious. I'm consider myself spiritual. And I say, oh, okay. And sometimes I might even ask them too, would you say that you're spiritual, right? Because that's like the new understanding, right, in the world. When people realize that religion teaches lies, but then they don't really find the truth yet. Then they're in that go-between, they're in that in-between place where it's like, all right, I really don't want to test any religion because they teach lies. But I'm not going to say there's no God. So let me just say I'm spiritual, right? So this verse is perfect for that. But then in the same breath, they'll say, oh, you can't judge me. Only God can judge me, right? But now let's make a difference between judging versus condemning, right? Because we can judge. We read that earlier, right? In Romans 3 verses 3 to 4. You read it earlier, right, Yakazak? Yeah. That thou mightest be justified in thy sayings and overcome when thou art judged. You're doing it all the time. It's just making a decision. It's all judging is, right? What to wear, right? Where you're going to go today, when you're going to go, how are you going to get there? These are all judgments, right? We ask these questions and we weigh things in the balance when, sometimes there might be 2 or 3 options that are all, you want to look at those 2 or 3 options, maybe 4 options and say, which way is best? Like they used to do with those tests they give us, the multiple choice. Sometimes I kind of prefer the fill in the blank. At least it force you to study the way where you have to know the answer. But multiple choice will trick you up sometimes. It'll say, circle the best answer. Right? And you're like, best answer. Okay, you have to kind of get in the frame of thinking of who wrote the questions, right? To make sure this is the best answer because of what they said here in the passage before, or, it can get a little confusing sometimes. But when dealing with matters, that's what's key, right? To be able to ask those questions, gather information, and figure out, okay, what's the best way to go here, right? Okay, I might be doing well with option A and B, but option C is the best option, and here's the reason. the what is favorable, and the where is favorable, and the when is favorable, and the how much is favorable, right? Whereas these other options, what and the how much is good, but the location where it's at, not so good. So let me nix that option B. Let me go option C, where I've got the checks, where it's favorable and all, all across the board. See, I'll take them to this verse. So 1 Corinthians 2 and 15. Just say comment, you have it. Right. So it reads, but he that is spiritual judgeth all things, yet he himself is judged of no man. Right? They say, yeah, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. Oh, okay, cool. Read this verse. But he that is spiritual judgeth all things. So right here in the scriptures, you're given license to judge. If you claim to believe in the Bible, you're given license to judge. So you got so many so-called Christians that claim they believe in God, they believe in Christ, they believe in the Bible, right? But then they'll say, oh, you can't judge me. I can't judge anyone either. Only God can judge. No, we can judge. We just can't condemn, right? That's the difference. But we can judge, and we've been judging. Like we said earlier, we do it every day, right? Like we said earlier, what am I going to do today? What do I expect the result to be? Where am I going to go today? When am I going to go there? Who am I going to call today or talk to today to handle certain things, right? These are all judgments. People oftentimes make this more complicated than it needs to be. It can be difficult, but it shouldn't be complicated, right? The option should be clear. That's the whole point of gathering information. Once the options are clear, then you can weigh them in the balance and go, okay, better, best. This is the best one. Let's go with this.
Yeah, what the pitfall that most people fall into, and because of society, when you make a judgment call, you say you can't judge, but you can judge because you're judging from a standpoint. You're not. They confuse judgment with condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they say because you judge the person, you're condemning them. No, you're only judging them against what you know, what you think, or you know to be right.
Right.
And you're not condemning them. Only God can condemn them. You can judge based on your knowledge.
Right. And that's why the best way to frame it is, especially when we're out there teaching, whether we're out at camp or we're just talking to someone one-on-one, could be, you're running errands at the post office, at the supermarket, whatever. You say, truth comes up, topic comes up, okay, I'm buying some food, clean, unclean, right? Or I'm buying stuff for a holiday that's not of the Most High, whatever it is. You just say, hey, listen, brother, sister, stranger, if you stay saying that or stay doing that when Christ comes back, you got a judgment to look forward to. Right? But you don't say, oh, you 2/3, as far as our brothers and sisters, right? You 2/3, you're finished, right? Because they're doing some wickedness right now. Tell them, look, if you stay saying that, if you stay doing that, if you stay wearing that, right? That's against the scriptures. And Christ comes back. That's it. And I'm warning you now, right now, brother, sister, he could come and visit you before Christ comes back. Especially now I'm giving you the warning, right? Out of love. Because I want to see what? Your soul salvation. So that's judging. And that's legit. But yeah, just to write someone off and say, yeah, you're condemned because you're wearing that, saying that, doing that. That's where you mess up. That's no good. Let me have you read this next one, Baba Kushah. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 4. We're just going to read 3 to 5. So 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 3 to 5.
Well, chapter 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3. But with me, it is a very small thing that I should judge of you or of man's judgment. Ye, I judge not my own self.
Right. So Paul's writing to the church in Corinth again. He's saying, with me is a very small thing that I should be judged of you or of man's judgment. Yeah. I judge not my own self. Read on.
For I know nothing by myself. Yeah. I, nor hereby justified, but he that judged me is Yahweh.
So that sounds familiar, right? Doesn't that sound like what Christ said earlier in John? So what's Paul saying there? In verse 4.
For I know nothing by myself. He's letting us know here that it's not necessarily what he knows personally by himself, but he gets his authority, his thought from the Most High.
Right.
And yet I not hereby justified, but he that judged me is Yahweh. And so he knows that it's not his justification, but he's been also judged by the Most High God.
Mm-hmm. I think when you have Lord in the New Testament, usually it's referring to Christ. Usually when it's referring to the Most High, it'll just say the Father. Typically. Read verse 5, and then we'll jump to Colossians.
Therefore, judge nothing before time, until the Lord come, who bring to light the hidden things of darkness, and will make manifest the counsel of the hearts, and then shall every man have praise of Yahweh.
Right. So what's that saying?
Every man will manifest the counsel of the hearts. He's going to look at the people, the nation of people,
Mm-hmm.
the council, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to judge them of their hearts, from where they coming from, their hearts and minds,
Mm-hmm.
and how they're living, I guess you would say. All that's going to be judged. Every man have praise of the Lord. Well, every man has to praise the Lord, but you're going to be judged by counsel, by your the groups, the people that you are with. All that's going to be judged.
Mm-hmm.
In your hearts, with your mind is projected, and how whether you're following the Most High or you're following after your own thoughts.
Exactly.
Unless I'm reading too much into it.
No, you got it. That's the nail. That's the you hit the nail right on it, right on the wood. So come. Praise be His Son. Praise be the Holy Spirit. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is, because surveillance can't do this, right? Online tracking, right? We always talk about, my phone is listening to me, Siri listening to what I'm saying, and, looking at what websites I go to and trying to advertise to me, blah, 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 right? See, this, what the angels do constantly, goes much deeper. And what Esau with the technology, right, that he tries to control, not necessarily an event. A lot of the stuff is invented by other nations, but he just is able to mass produce it, buy it out, buy the intellectual property to it, and then use it as a means of control. But even those things are going to fall short as far as his surveillance, through his cameras, right, through his satellites, through ways he monitors us on these, electronic devices, all this. But now this goes into, like you read, the hearts and minds, right? The people that you hang with when you think nobody's looking. Thoughts that you have, right, when you think no one's looking, no one's listening, right? Things that are being done in the dark, like we read earlier. Esau's doing a lot of things in the dark, and he spends much time and effort, right, and resources to keep his hidden things hidden. But even still, those things are coming onto the surface, right? As far as the occult practices that he's into, right? Sacrificing people and abuse of children, this supposed war on drugs, right? Drug war, right? How it's used as a weapon, right? To weaken people, right? Even his own people. These things are being exposed by his own, and of course by us, but you see even his own people are shining a light on this stuff that he's doing behind the scenes, right? And then they had to do double the work to try to cover it up or to try to discredit whoever the person is blowing the whistle. To say, oh, you listen to him, you listen to her, look at them, they're into this, they're into that, they're crazy, don't listen to them, Try to discredit them so that they got no influence to try to, speak bad on the government or a government agency or, somebody in the government, right? Or somebody within a corporation is saying they're doing something that's corrupt. So all these things they think that they're keeping hidden from the public eye, they can't hide from the Most High's eyes. Like you read, he sees it all. And to bring it back to a place of righteousness, which is where our main focus is, let's close out with this verse here. It's not a new moon scripture, but also a judgment scripture as well. Go to Colossians chapter 2. Colossians 2, verses 16 and 17. Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. And I'll read this one. I think you read the last one, so I'll read this. Colossians 2 and 16. You have it, right? Written down? You wrote down what we just read, right? 1 Corinthians 4. We read 3 to 5. And you got 1 Corinthians 2:15, right? Yeah, just try to write as you go. Sometimes it can be tough, especially when you maybe into a certain verse. So Colossians 2 and 16, it says, let no man therefore judge you, right? It says, in meat or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or the Sabbath days. So let no man therefore judge you, right? But how? In meat or in drink, meaning things that you eat, making sure that what they're lawful. And if they are lawful, that you don't do it in excess, right? Or drink. That the things you drink, that they're lawful. And if they are lawful, that you don't do those in excess either, right? There's such a thing as what, being a drunkard and a glutton, right? Even with things that are lawful to eat and drink. So you shouldn't be judged in that, right? Because we're supposed to be keeping the commandments and exercise the fruit of the Spirit, which in this case it would be temperance, the fruit of temperance, which deals with self-control as far as how much you eat and drink. Then it says, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days. So we're keeping the new moon right now, right? So in respect of a holy day or of the new moon. So someone shouldn't be judging you saying, hey, you should be keeping this, right? How come you're not keeping this? It should be something that you already know, right? Just like when we're out there on the Sabbath days, right? Teaching after the service. And then we'll see people at the camp, they'll walk by the camp and they'll go, hey, shalom, brother, shalom, right? We're like, hey, shalom, brother, okay, how you doing, right? So what we find is Israel's real good at saying the right thing, but they're still not doing the right thing a lot of times. It's time in special circumstances where, okay, they might be with another camp and, but right. So they know just what to say so that by the time you get your next question out, they're already about halfway down the street so they can, get away. But they'll say, yeah, shalom, yeah, peace, You say, you know what your tribe is, brother, sister? Tribe of Judah. Yeah, that's pretty good. And you see him with the shopping bag, You're just like, what's going on, brother, sister? What you got there? Right. And, you want to make sure because it might be an emergency, right? But in our experience, usually it's not, right? And then, when you call them out on it, they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I shouldn't be. It's like, look, we all got needs, we got busy schedules. Okay, we get it, right? But if you can help it, just wait a couple hours, brother, sister, right? Because the sun will be down, or do your shopping Thursday and Friday, right? As far as these types of things you need to get. Like we said in the beginning of the class, structure your life around the Most High schedule, right? But what it is, is effort involved. But are we willing to make that effort and do it to the best of our ability? Applying grace, yes, but acting as if, grace is like a get out of jail free. Like you kind of treat it like you see with the you go into buildings and they have like fire extinguisher and it says in case of emergency break glass, or like an axe behind glass. It's a case of emergency break glass, right? That's how you should really look at grace, right? Use grace as in the case of an emergency, but as much as you can, as much as power that you have, plan your life. Right. Plan your life and plan your affairs so that you're making your appointments. If you had appointments to make, or if you have to go get medicine, you got to do this, you got whatever errands you have to do. Right. But if you know something's coming up or something that you have to do, plan it around the Most High schedule so that you don't have to do it on the Most High's day. Only if, in case of emergency, break glass, right? Put out the fire, right? Or get out of the room if you're, blocked because of a fire or something. So that's the outlook we should have when it comes to that. But all in all, we should have that knowledge. That's why it says in verse 17, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. So this is what connects back what we read earlier in Isaiah 66 and 23. It shall come a day when what? From one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another shall all flesh come to worship before me. So that's speaking to that time in the future here in Colossians 2 and 17 as well. That's why it says, which are a shadow of things to come. It says, but the body is of Christ. So we're all members of Christ's body, right? We all serve different functions. We should all be walking in that righteousness in the end. Okay, just a little after 11:30. We'll close out here. I hope everybody was edified. There's other verses, we probably touch on those verses in the next class, Most High as well, that I'm privileged to teach, to go into judging, right? And we're going to be doing more review of parables as we did Tuesday. But get ready as far as this Friday class coming up in the Sabbath service, right? Which when you look, those are the next things we have coming up. So this Friday from 7 to 10, we'll have that the class that week, and then we'll have the Sabbath service that's coming up. So keep that in your radar for the immediate future. But I'll say it again. apply grace, right? And apply it as just think of that mental image, right, of a fire extinguisher or like an axe behind glass in case of emergency, right? Try to, keep this date even tomorrow if you can. If you don't have to go to work and you have to use time off, you have to use it kind of sparingly, only for like major holy days, not just the new moon because it comes around too often. You only got so many, sick days. Most High understands that. You got more control over your schedule, the idea should be to let those be your times off. Let those be times to reflect on things and to look into things you're trying to work on for the truth and things like that. Let these days be for that. But try to enjoy the new moon to the best of your ability. Enjoy the holy day. Enjoy your night. With that, we'll say Layla Tawab, which means good night. We'll also say Shar Khadash, which just means happy new moon. And with that, we'll do the closing prayers. I want to say Barakat Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, Ruach HaKodesh, which just means blessed be the Most High in the name of Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. We always give thanks to those figures because without them, we couldn't do what we do. We couldn't say what we say. All right. So with that, we'll do the closing prayer. You get the blinds, Baba Kushan. Barakat Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah Tananaw Parya Kapan Tawada Aman. Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, Yasher English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. Amadwa, Panuay Roshlam, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Baba Kushai, Shemad, Lanawa, Aitha, Yemyan, Aitha, Shalak, Ma'ika Allah, Wala Allahayim, Tazwadakian, La, Shamar Ayel, Barak, Rapah, Magun, Wa Chazayak, Banya, Yasharala, Washalak, Lanawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Rabiam, Da'if, Rabiam, Bayana, Rabiam, Sabalanwa, Rabiam, Amawan, Rabiam, Aqua, Rabiam, Ahabiam, Rabiam, Haganah, Rakhanaya, Wasalak, Kal, Katsayanawa, La Akim, Wa Akiwa, Wayasha'ala, Dunyad, Waiwalam, Ba'asham, Yahawashad, the water, Aman. English translation, Yahweh, the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. Send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four corners prayer. Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha'ala, Wabathia Saparim, Shema Yasharallah, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books or the school. And then we read, Shema Yasharallah, Hear O Israel, Lord our God is one Lord. Let's do the prayer for the food. Yahweh, Kadawo, Ba'asham, Adawanya, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Barak, Ma'akal, Yanawa, Shetayawa, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lacham, Yanawa, Shakara, Yanawa, Zakar, Hachadash, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, the water. Amen. All right, so once again, Brakateha Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, Laharuka Kwadash, Shar Chadash, Wa Laila Tuwa, Yashara. Shalom.
Shalom.